Employers of Reddit. What makes a potential hire stand out from the crowd? Serious. A good attitude. Not overly positive, but good. It's okay to accept that you've made a mistake instead of trying to justify your action. Agreed. I once got a job because in the interview they asked me how I handled a problem. I told the truth and said I hadn't mastered it yet, but here were all the things I had tried. I had a guy call to let me know he had just applied online, and another one actually wrote a letter and tailored his resume to the job. I've been getting so many applications that it gave me a reason to look at theirs specifically. Being generally personable during the interview and having questions prepared are big ones. I'm looking for someone interested in this job, not just a job, who would be fun for my team and me to work with. I manage a restaurant in a somewhat poor part of a large city, so it would be you showed up for your interview on time, dress and sober. Not having felony convictions is a bonus. Basically, if we don't hire you, no one will. Having an interviewee who is knowledgeable about the company, that scores major points. A little research goes a long way. Side anecdotal note, I gave this tip to a very close friend of mine before an engineering internship interview. He said it went over very well during the interview and he got the internship. Now they are going to be hiring him on full time. Only thing I hate is if you go on their website and it just tells you about the general company, and they ask you at the interview what you know about that specific location, as if there was a way to look it up on their website. Can't always look it up on their website. Understanding why the interviewer is asking the questions they're asking. You got to think like a manager. Like, if an interviewer asks what's your biggest weakness, they're not trying to see how well you can spin a negative into a lame positive. Like, I'm a perfectionist workaholic who cares too much. Gross. A better answer is something like, early in my career, I had some issues with time management. Over time, I've worked out a system that is perfect for me, using Google Calendar reminders. My smartwatch. They're interested in whether you're the type of person who is self-aware enough to identify areas for improvement, humble enough to admit them, and savvy enough to address them. Those people are coachable. Listing accomplishments at a previous workspace rather than just a list of duties. More examples. I now work in education. If I applied for another teaching job, I would put on my resume how many kids were reading at or above grade level by the end of the school year. Quantitative, and suggestions that I made that were adopted by administration. Qualitative, or things I tried in my classrooms and the outcomes. Qualitative. My partner works as a student loan counselor. He could discuss the change in exit counseling completion rate since he started. Quantitative, and the website he designed to help students understand their loans. Qualitative. If you worked a job you hate and just clocked in, did your job, and left and can't think of any accomplishments, you're going to have a weak resume and it's going to come across that you don't have work ethic and won't contribute anything to the prospective company. All resumes should also list your skills, but a resume without accomplishments does nothing for me. First impressions. For my old employer I would help do interviews, and being front desk I would often meet them first. Surprising the amount of people who would walk in and not even look at me and just say I think I have an interview, and this was for a front of house role as well. Nothing wrong with nerves, but prepare yourself and what you are going to say before even starting your interview. Introduce yourself to the front desk by name and state why you're there. Shows respect and thoroughness. To start, I run an escape room, so we need people who can solve unexpected problems quickly. If someone says something a bit out of place or screws up a tiny bit while getting interviewed, I value when they can recover as if nothing happened. Whenever I interviewed anyone, I was always impressed when a candidate knew about the company more than just our slogan. Also, I make a point to ask a candidate to explain a specific detail or two about previous jobs they've listed on their resume. If they can nail those kinds of questions, I immediately give their resume a lot more weight. Trustworthiness. A lot of people will just fluff up their resume to sound a lot better than they should. Applying skills that are needed for the job. I recently put out a casting call for narrators. Two stood out from the crowd. One said I would need to pay them a small fee for an audition. It was a paid job, but a fee for an audition. The other sent me a sound file of himself reading the job description. The former never made it to the audition stage. The latter got the job. When I've hired, I've found the strongest candidates to be those with a sense of curiosity appropriate to the actual interview flow. A lot of interviews, especially with younger candidates, tend to be question, answer, question, answer. The candidates that really stand out are the ones that take my questions and, intelligently, not just to show that they read some pro tips on interviewing, turn them back around to ask interesting questions or follow those, or otherwise start a conversation on a particular point. Example might be, do you have any experience with? Yes, in my previous position, I did. I'm curious how you guys do here. I know it can be done a few ways. Do you have any preference or have you found any way to be particularly more efficient? Thanks for the tip. I like this one. I had a professor who had some helpful tips. He asked the class, if you were to stack quarters, how many would you need to equal the height of the Empire State Building? He walked around the room pointing at people for the answer. Most people answered, I don't know, or threw out a high number. The one guy that got the answer right said I don't know, but give me a minute, I'll figure it out. The guy got on Google, found the dimensions of a quarter and the ES building, and did the math right there in the classroom. The teacher said that's the answer. You didn't know, but you could figure it out. Okay, this intrigued me, so I had to do the math, and figured I'd share to save others the time. The answer is 264,798 quarters to reach the height of the Empire State Building's tip. Monetary value of $66,199.50. I'm selfish. I'm thinking, will this candidate make my job easier or harder? If you have a personality that I think fits with the team, you seem to have a history of good work ethic, and you respond to my general questions with refining questions so you can give the best answers you are capable of, you are as good as in, I know I can help you learn the technical side. I hire in IT and technical support. I've had many former employees start their technical career with me and then move on to great careers, so I like to think I can pick winners. You have identified my hiring process and I work at a wastewater treatment plant. I don't need someone disturbing the team dynamics I've fostered with my staff. If someone is going to make my job more difficult, I don't need them. Ask good questions during the interview. It's not really if we want you, it's more if you want to work with us. If you don't ask good, thoughtful questions, your interview will be done in 20 minutes. In IT, people skills, knowing how to configure a switch is one thing, but if you're smug butthole or social retard, you're gonna get passed up for somebody personable who knows less than you. Sharpness and sincerity, straight answers to the questions. You don't know the answer, you just say so, without convoluted ways to make it look like you do. I've actually did this in a job I interviewed for. The guy who interviewed me actually took the time to explain some of the stuff to me, and I think he kinda took the way I reacted and understood the stuff as a plus because I got the job in the end. I'm not currently someone who hires people, but I was. I did a ton of research and found that the only thing that predicts performance is previous experience and success. If someone had a good resume, could explain what they did competently, and tell me how they'd approach a problem with the job I was looking to hire them for, they were hired. Most of what people interview for is not predictive of performance. Bad cultural fit is a euphemism for you're too old, look wrong, or I have a friend with less experience I want to hire. Not saying I did that, but it's what I found. Not necessarily stand out, but make yourself a respectable candidate. Upload all documents, resume, cover letter, whatever it requires, in PDF, not Word. You don't know how annoying it is, as well as how many documents open up jumbled. Just on our last search for a position, about 5 candidates got thrown in the trash since their resume opened up with weird formatting and was unreadable. Anyone can open a PDF and it'll always look as you intended. We just interviewed a few people in my office. Outside of experience, we brought in the candidates because we wanted to see if they would fit with our organization's culture and mission. If 2 candidates have similar skills, many times we will think, is this someone who we can go to for help, would want to work with? Following the directions. I recently sent questions to applicants with directions on how to complete. Only one person followed the directions. I hired her. I have had to hire scientists with PhDs. We care about your experience. No one cares where you got your BSBA. No one cares really where you got your PhD, as long as it wasn't strip mall you. What we care about is how you've used it. And, yes, that applies to fresh out of school PhDs. You shouldn't have graduated without publishing at least one peer-reviewed article. In most science positions, you'll be asked to make a 20-30 minute presentation about your work. This is extremely important. Practice now. Everyone will judge you heavily on this. Your hiring committee also have PhDs and years of experience, so be prepared for questions afterwards. All that being said, we know you're smart already. Despite everything I just said, if you made it to the interview, honestly we're looking at your personality. Your competition is someone equally intelligent. We're looking for who we can work with, because that's important. Asking questions. The interview is a two-way street. I need to convince you why this job is exciting and a growth opportunity for you, just as much as you need to convince me that you're the right person. Ask questions about the role, about the company, about my experience and about the team. It shows you're interested and want to learn more, and hopefully, you'll continue to ask questions once you're hired, as that's an integral part of learning the job. I've always hired for attitude and trained for skill. Show me a positive attitude, a humble attitude, and one which demonstrates your willingness to learn, and you've got the best chance of getting the job. Sending a thank you email after the interview is always nice too. It shows you're serious and interested and that you're willing to put in a little bit more effort. Consequently, that also increases your chances of getting the job. Source: former executive in the aerospace industry, previously based in London and Singapore. I was hiring for a leadership position. On the interview panel I had several stakeholders from outside the organization involved. One candidate took note of this and frankly asked them what their expectations and pitfalls of our organization were. Everyone asked the same typical questions, but asking in-depth questions that showed he put some serious thought into the potential role really stood out. Look me in the eye and speak clearly in our interview. If you can't handle these two simple things for the first 2 minutes that I meet you, it's pretty much over. I can read nervous or shy and will take longer to break through those barriers. But if I am not engaged when talking to you, I can't imagine that anyone else would be either. I think it is that they have a qualification that no other applicant has and the company needs. But sometimes it is just that the hiring manager's brother went to college with the applicant and was his friend. The problem with applying is that companies often don't really know what they are looking for in an applicant, and even when they do know, they often can't articulate it. Step 1. Hire more employees. Step 2. Step 3. Profit. Saying you are bubbly, hardworking, determined and other non-tangible words like that all sound great, but I can't mark you on that. Say the word and give a real example of how that is true using your previous employment. Avoiding stock answers. If you tell me what you think I want to hear, I know that's what you're doing. I also will think you are slightly dishonest and will give the right answer about work problems instead of giving the honest answer. I've been burned by yes men women in the past. Open honesty goes a very long way in an interview. Someone who comes with their own set of well thought out questions that show they have done their research. Nothing better than having someone quiz me on our pipeline, workflows and technology, and when I give them an answer that isn't too deep, they come back with further questions to clarify and really understand. That sort of thing shows that they have experience enough to care about the details, and are a strong enough candidate that they want to be sure they are working on the cutting edge and will ask smart questions to find out if that's where we operate. For example, weak candidate: what software do you guys use here? Stronger candidate: I hear you switched to using X software here recently. A lot of people rave about it and I've been meaning to try that. How did you find that transition? Superstar: I know you guys switched to using X software recently. I've tested it extensively in my spare time to see how it compares to other pipelines and it offers some huge advantages, so I'm keen to explore it further. I've read your recent scientific papers and I'm interested in how you get past Y inherent limitation in that tool, and whether you found Z to be problematic when scaled across a large facility. I came into my last interview with a list by the time we got past the initial portions. 10-15 mins. I only had 3 left. Best interviewer I've ever had. He also did his research. Spent probably an additional 20 minutes just having some laughs about our time in the military. Always answer based on the job you're going for, not a potential promotion, and always point out what'll make you better for that position. Don't overdo it. I asked my employer, at a motion graphics company, this question and he said only one answer I gave mattered to him. He asked, on a scale of 1-10 how creative would you say you are? My answer, orange. For some reason that made me stick out more than the other 4 finalists, all of whom had more experience and education, and I don't even hold a degree. I had a decent body of work to back me up, but still. There's just no way of knowing what an employer is going to value, so I decided to just be my genuine weird butt self and hope they'd value that. When interviewing, smile. Just smile a few times. I gave interviews to a bunch of candidates just last week, and when reviewing them we were amazed that only one smiled in all of the interviews. She got the job. Enthusiasm. I find it hard to believe it's not always the case. Make out you really want the job. Compliment the interviewer on something about the company you really like, also showing you know about them. Interviewers are human too. Treat them so for best results. This bothers me because I generally never show enthusiasm to mostly anything. I'm not gonna lie. One I can't stress enough is to cater your resume profile specifically to the role you are applying for. You should have one basic outline of your resume, and then you should add specific work, accomplishments, projects and experiences that relate to the job. For example, I currently have a business systems analyst role I'm working to fill, and we have had over 150 applicants. I have had to reject over 100 of them because they either don't have or didn't bother to list anything pertaining to their experience with SQL or SPSS or Stata, which are critical tools and knowledge for the role. I wonder how many of those 100 are actually qualified for the role but will never get the opportunity because they couldn't take the time to refine their resume and profile. Source: I'm corporate recruiting manager. Someone who rings me when they see the job ad to discuss the role and the organization. This is as much to inform themselves to enable a good application to be written, as well as to find out if it's a job and an organization they actually would like. Both show self-awareness and preparation, and I always ask their name and note it if they haven't clearly given it to me yet. That's so hard to do though. So many listings nowadays say no phone calls or basically read or send your resume and that's it. Initiative. I work at a small boutique law firm. There is no perfect resume for our firm. We are willingly to invest in someone who does not has less experience or different expertise if you demonstrate initiative on your resume. If you have large stints of unemployment, volunteer and gain experience and put it on your resume. To me it's been usually one little behavior related thing that always made the difference. I always try to make the interview less stressful for the candidate so he can act more naturally, bringing more casual conversations when there's an opportunity for it, trying to make the person feel more comfortable, and that's when I tend to find what I want. Some people prepare a lot their interviews and cleverly just say what you want to hear, but when you create a diversion you realize that it's pretty fake, whereas some people are not as good to sell to you their talent. But as soon as you dig under the formal stuff, you realize that there's a lot of potential. I'm working in IT, where the cliché of socially awkward people is sometimes verified. Some great and humble talented people just lack a bit of confidence and don't know how to value their skills. But I don't care as long as I feel that the person can fit into the company, getting along with the others employees and do a good job. So, to answer your question, whenever a candidate acts naturally, even if they're not confident, and makes me feel that they genuinely know their stuff and don't sell balls to me, it tends to make it stand out from the crowd. It doesn't mean it always works. Sometimes the interview goes really well but the profile does not really match what we need. If you've made it to the sit-down interview, they already have an idea that you meet the on-paper requirements. Now they want to see if they like you. if you're someone they could stand working with daily. Being able to ask questions that have meaning is important. Bonus points if you've done your research on the company and can work that into your questions. Your company started in 1998 working with such and such technology and now you're focused on such and such industry. What technologies do you see focusing on in the next couple years? Lastly, though it might seem obvious, specifically tell your interviewer that you want this job and why. Don't lie or feed a bunch of buzzwords, but definitely be human about it. Gimme a little something extra. Show me a bit of your personality as well. Don't be a robot. Anything that sets you apart helps. About 90% of the people who applied for the job are qualified to do it. That's why they applied. But what are you going to do that they can't? And can I deal with you 8 hours a day 5 days a week for potentially the next 50 years? I was hiring for a career placement advisor position once. A whole bunch of people talked about their ability to network, which was of course great. But one guy talked about not only that, but also his passion for the work, ideas he had for the future of the position, what he could do to take us to the next level, and then he pulled out a portfolio of businesses, both local and beyond, that he already had strong relationships with that he could bring to our agency. It was a no-brainer at that point. That depends really, but if a guy had some sort of connections with, say, helicopters, he is an instant hire for me. I don't know crap about repairing avionics or rotor gearboxes, but I rode in a medical helicopter when I was unconscious once. Hired. I've been involved in several interviews, usually in the role of administering a skills-based test in Excel. The test is designed to go through several steps of difficulty. Can you follow directions and place the correct information in the right cell? Creating a drop-down using data validation. Perform a lookup. Know how to create an embedded if statement. Realize the limitations of lookup and know to use an index match. Then combining all of it to get specific data to appear based on the drop-down. All of the candidates know at the very least that they should be able to create drop-downs and lookups prior to the test, but they don't know anything further. My former company used Excel in specific ways for good reason, so being able to do this is huge for us, and the test closely reflected commonly used logic structures. I don't expect anyone to finish the test. That's not what I look for. What I do look for is how they think logically, if they put in the minimum effort to learn what we told them to know, their willingness to ask questions, and how they deal with stress. My favorites were the ones that would work things out in a logical way even if convoluted, didn't let the stress get to them, and wanted to see an example of how to complete the task afterward, which also gave me the opportunity to see how they took to a quick training session. That said, I really appreciate the insights provided by everyone else in regards to the other aspects of the interview process. I'm currently on the hunt for an opportunity in project management and these help a lot. Send the hiring manager an email thanking them for the opportunity for an interview, and that you look forward from hearing back. I hired someone who questioned a strongly held belief I had about design. It was a situation where it could have been easy for her to just say yes, of course, but she stopped me and challenged the idea. She then backed it up with some solid rationale for why my thinking wasn't necessarily always the only answer. Not only was she right, but I was really glad to see that she believed in her point enough to clarify it, and even teach me something about it. I knew then that she was not afraid to stand her ground in tricky meetings or with difficult internal customers. She stood out for having original thoughts that went against standard opinion, and that mattered a lot, and I hired her. I've said it before and I'll say it again, how you treat receptionists, other low-ranking staff, customers, etc. goes a long way. Usually, you introduce yourself and ask for the hiring manager, but it takes a good 5 minutes for them to arrive and meet you, especially if you're early. That 5 minutes is crucial. Make small talk with the receptionist, ask them how their day's going, get chatting. It 1. Allows you to get a feel for the company. 2. Settles any nerves you might have. 3. Shows to the interviewer that you're respectful of those beneath you and confident, capable talking with new people. And 4. Gets you on their good side early. If the receptionist's busy or it's not the sort of place to have a receptionist, see what else you can do. Chat with a customer and recommend an item to them. Flatter them a bit. If a kid falls over, help them up. If you see a cleaner struggling with a trolley full of cleaning products and there's a door in their way, hold the door for them, then after to help carry something wherever they're going. If somebody drops something, pick it up for them. If there's an obvious mess or obstruction, sort it out. If nothing else, walk around the room and get a judge of the layout. Do all of that again on your way out the door. Thank the receptionist for their time. Say goodbye to the cleaner. Hold the door for the old lady with the walking stick. People notice these things. And even if they don't, do it because it is the right thing to do and it will make their and your day better. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.